Federal workers have received a stream of emails from DOGE and Elon Musk over the last months on a range of issues. Over the past several weeks, nearly a dozen lawsuits have been filed challenging DOGE's access to federal government record systems, mostly on claims that this access violates various procedural requirements found in federal privacy regulations. Journalist Christian Britschgi of Reason magazine delved into these lawsuits. In his article, he writes, quote, "In a nod to the online nature of the case, their original complaint cites an anonymous, since-deleted Reddit post about the process by which the email system was set up. More recent court filings also lean on a podcast interview in which a privacy expert evaluates the potential for data breaches as a result of the new email system." Here with us now to go deeper into these lawsuits is my colleague, Christian Britschgi. Welcome to Rising.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So go over these lawsuits with us. I mean, I think it probably strikes many people as odd that can President Trump or the head of the federal government email all the federal employees? What sort of legal issues are at play? Is government never going to be efficient if you can't have some level of communication taking place there?
Sure. So on the issue of this email server that was set up at the Office of Personnel Management, basically the White House HR department for the entire federal government, the legal issue at play is whether there was an email server set up by DOGE staffers to email all federal employees. This was the email server that they've used to offer their fork in the road deferred resignation program, where federal employees could resign and receive 8 months pay. And then it's also this email system that they're using now to send out these emails saying, what did you do this week? So the legal issue that was first raised in a lawsuit filed by unnamed government employees back in early January was whether the server was set up without producing a privacy impact assessment, which is something required when you are creating basically a new government database that includes personally identifiable information. You have to produce one of these statements or assessments and then publish a notification of it in the Federal Register. Federal employees sued, saying that this process was not followed. Therefore, this email server was set up illegally, and therefore the government isn't allowed to use it. There's been, as you mentioned, there's been, we're getting, past the dozen point of lawsuits filed challenging DOGE's various access to different record systems, payment systems. All of them make varying claims, some of them about this privacy impact assessment, others citing other aspects of federal privacy regulations and procedural requirements attached to it. But that is most relevant for whether DOGE and the president can email employees all at once.
And do you think there's a substantive issue there? I mean, setting aside who will ultimately prevail in this case, is it problematic if the government or the president or the executive branch or Elon Musk have used this measure, this server, without going through those procedures that were previously outlined?
I would say no. It doesn't strike me as particularly egregious that this is an ability that the president would have. And again, I would also point to the fact that so in that lawsuit, a district court judge rejected the plaintiff's request for temporary restraining order, basically on the grounds that while they might eventually prevail in the merits, that the injury to these government employees, they hadn't really shown that there was going to be some sort of imminent irreparable harm. He said, at worst, the information that might be disclosed is their work emails, which he was rather dismissive of as a reason to grant a temporary restraining order. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean he might not rule a different way once all the merits have been decided. But so I think the injury there is not extreme, and this is data the government already would have access to via other means. This was an attempted streamlining within the executive branch. I don't consider it a huge power grab or something like that.
Let's get a little bit more big picture. You and I have discussed what DOGE is doing, privately a number of times. You wrote something, I think, over the weekend describing the sunny side of Donald Trump's power grabs. You and I think, are both concerned about some of what's going on. Maybe our concern is that DOGE is not even doing enough to really grapple with reckless government spending, bloat, that kind of thing. But should people like you and I, or people who agree with us on making government smaller and more efficient, be excited about the changes we're seeing, or are these serious power grabs by a rogue president or a rogue non-governmental special governmental actor, Elon Musk?
Yeah, so I mean, the way I like to think about this from, obviously a libertarian perspective is, Trump is not a libertarian. He's not doing this to really shrink the government. He's doing it to exert greater centralized control over the executive branch. Nevertheless, I think libertarians will probably end up being the primary beneficiaries of this effort. He wants to magnify the executive branch, but it doesn't seem like he's building, he's replacing what he views as a, liberal-dominated deep state with a government dominated by his own lackeys. I don't think he's going to be successful in that effort. I think the various kind of DOGE missteps or examples of what seem like kind of incompetence or just ill thought out moves testifies to that, speaks to that. But what will be left in its place is just less functional government bureaucracies that we don't think should exist at all. That doesn't apply necessarily to every DOGE action. That certainly doesn't apply to all of President Trump's various executive orders when it comes to things like immigration, where obviously libertarians will be very critical of any sort of expansion of state power or executive power to deport people. But by and large, if Trump is thrashing around, and what he's smashing is government bureaucracies that we don't think should exist in the first place. And so I'm sanguine about that. We'll see where it goes, but I'm not too freaked out, and maybe this will actually work out to libertarian benefit.
But if I'm understanding correctly, Christian, your sanguine outlook is based on the fact that the Trump effort to execute that plan is kind of dogged by incompetence, right? I mean, the impulse is there that you would find worrisome. You just think that they'll kind of trip over themselves in the attempt to do it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that, it's kind of a truism that it's easier to break something than to build something. And so if you shutter USAID, and then, a judge tells you have to bring back the staffers, you have to spin up these programs again, or maybe that's found to be perfectly legal and a subsequent administration tries to build it back up, they're going to have a much harder time doing that. And so as a result, if I don't think this agency should exist, then I'm happy to see its functions hobbled. Again, as I said in the piece that Robbie referenced, this isn't the ideal way I would like to see someone go about it. It would be great if this were more methodical and this were done with the intent of shrinking government, getting it back into its more proper role. That's not on the table. That's not what's happening here. But when I look at the results and the likely results, it does seem to be a smaller, less capable federal government, and I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah, you and I have spent so much time arguing with the kind of new right people who are like, we need conservatives, Republicans to seize control of we need to run these institutions and replace the people who runs them with our people, kind of textbook. We must, use the ring to fight Sauron instead of destroying it. It looks like they're actually, intentionally or not, they're going with destroying it. So how upset can we really be? We got to leave it there. Christian Britschgi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Up next, Jane Fonda is going after the right. Surprise, surprise. We'll discuss. Stay tuned.